Good day, good evening, good people. We are back for another episode of Before the Fame podcast. And today I want to get into a series of episodes where we share with you a story or stories that educate over shame, right? So we've had a plethora of stories that came out the past few weeks. We saw some good films. Well, a good film. I can't say good films. We saw Sinners this past weekend or yesterday, actually. And man, we just have so much education that we want to give to you guys. And in a world that likes to shame you for what you don't know or shame you for actions that, may have put you in a difficult position, we're going to change that today. We're going to educate you guys on a few things that you may or may not know. So tune in for this lovely episode tonight. And while we're at it, we're going to thank the Lord for another good day, another good week, actually. It's been a very, very good, positive, productive week. And everything that has transpired, it was all in God's plan, right? So this past day, I was getting my hair retwisted. For you guys that don't know, I have locks that I've been growing for the past 4.5 years now. And I was getting a retwist. And while I was getting my hair twisted, I was looking up movie tickets on Sinners. And at first, I was going to go further out than I planned originally because of the timings that were available. And I was looking for something around 7 o'clock, and my appointment was originally at 1:45 for a haircut. And I got there. I met a loctician there who gave me her card first, and I thought about it. I'm like, I needed my hair retwisted. She was just right there. She didn't have any clients coming up. I said, why not give her an opportunity to retwist my hair? And if you know me, I'm not just someone who lets anybody touch my hair. Like, I have to trust your work. So, of course, after going on her Instagram page and checking out her work, I decided to give her a chance. And she did a great job, man. She did the what I showed her, she was able to execute it, and she did it without a problem. Like it seemed effortless for her, and she did a wonderful job. So I want to say shout out to her for that wonderful retwist. And also shout out to my barber, man. Bug is a person that I've been seeing for years. I know him through a family member. They went to the same school. Most of my family went to the same school. So shout out to him as well. And now for back to this ticket though. I'm sitting in a chair getting my hair twisted, and I was looking up movie tickets. And at first, I was going to go out to Atlantic Station. If you are in Atlanta, you know where I'm talking about. But Atlantic Station is about 30 minutes from my house. But I was like, I didn't know what time that she was going to be finished doing my hair. So originally, like I said, I wanted to be out for 7, and it was going on 4:30 at the time. And one of my friends, my good friend Eba, hit me up and asked me, have I seen Sinners yet? And I told her no, that I was on the look for a ticket, and she happened to have an extra ticket. So, of course, I'm all excited. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And she told me that the ticket was for a movie theater that was 15 minutes away. So, not only did she have the ticket, not only was it half the distance that I was trying to go out, but she had it for the exact time that I was looking originally. And when I tell you, man, that's God right there, God's timing. It all happened on his time, and I couldn't do anything but show up on time. And we got to see the movie Sinners, which, if you haven't seen it already, I highly encourage you to go see it. Michael B. Jordan playing Stack and Smoke was absolutely wonderful. The entire cast was perfect for the job. I feel like they left no crumbs. Everything that they did, they ate it up. And I would definitely go see it again. There's so many things that in that movie, it's an educational film. Like, I saw a lot of people try to critique it and say that it's demonic and all of these things. And while they did have some scenes where it was a bit questionable, I felt like it was more educational than everything that was said or that was critiqued about it, right? And this is why, again, when we get into these episodes, you're going to see that it crosses the lines of shame and education, right? Because on one end, it's all about your perspective on said piece or whatever information that's being presented, right? We can always turn it into something negative. We can always turn it into something that can be better. And it's how we present this information to whomever as an educational piece or a shameful piece, right? So when I talk about this movie, again, it's not for us to sit here and shame the actors or the director or anything like that, because what I try to convey is that how you perceive things is going to determine how you perceive your life, right? So some people, again, would like to look at it in a more positive light, like me. And it's usually because when you view your own life, or you may view yourself in a character, you like to view the positives, right? And you can be balanced with it. You know, you could have negative traits that, you know, resonate with you as well. And again, it's all about perspective, right? Because you can learn from the negative stuff just as much as you learn from the positive. So for me, I took a lot of positives and negatives from the characters of Smoke and Stack. You know, my brother and I have been regarded as the twins, and it's been that way since 2020. Actually, maybe a little bit before that, but you know, ever since we started working through temp agencies, we were known as the twins. We would always be together, and we would always have that yin and yang type of relationship, right? And not in a sense of like we were just polar opposites, but like we just kind of balanced each other out, right? And you know, some days it would be us, just us, and then other days it would be us in a group of people that we usually made, you know, the best of times with, right? So again, without telling the movie for those who haven't seen it, there was a particular scene there where Smoke and Stack were gathering up the materials and the people needed to have their grand opening, right? They were having a grand opening and they needed help from others to start this grand opening and kick it off with a bang. And just watching those elements come together reminded me of a time that we were in Panama. And I talked about this before, where we put together a party in less than 24 hours. You know, we went out, we went to the beach, we talked to a lot of folks that day, and we were able to secure a DJ. We were able to get all the things that we needed for this party, and it turned out to be one of the best memories that I have in my life, you know. And it wasn't necessarily because we were able to just have the biggest party or the livest party, but it was just the fact that it took was us working together, right? Us being on one accord of, hey, we got the spot, all we need is the people, you know, and everything else, it kind of just came together, right? We were able to, like I said, secure the DJ through contact that was actually secured on the beach earlier that day. So everything just happened again in God's plan. And this is why when I talk about these things, like, yes, it's going to be mentions of God. Yes, it's going to be mentions of biblical texts, because these things occur in our lives, and some of us may draw attention to it, some of us may ignore it. But for me, it's like, this is how I can be at peace with losses and, just making things out to be shameful, right? Because, like I said, we can look at it as a negative thing and try to put a certain light on it, or we could look at it as a positive thing, and how, again, working together as a team, having that vision, having that will, and just going out and doing it, right? Like, sometimes it's just that easy. Like, you got to get up, go out, do it. And then once you come back and realize, like, hey, like, I did all of this, and now it's like you got to prepare yourself in your area. Just that whole thing reminded me of that scene from the movie. And like I said, man, this whole thing isn't necessarily about the movie Sinners, but for us to have watched that, with a friend who has sparked so much into my endeavors, whether it comes from the brunch lovers, or me doing this before the fame episode, or everything. I feel like up until this point, like I said, we haven't talked the most, me and Eba, but we were giving each other's time and respect over this time of, like, reflection or isolation. We talked about things that we learned from our jobs, and I didn't know that we had so much in common when it came to the workplace, but we definitely had that time to sit back and talk and reconnect. And this is also why I'm going to take a brief moment here to explain that May 4th, I will be doing a brunch. May 4th, I will be doing a brunch. All the listeners here are invited. I will have more details for you guys, but just wanted to state that May 4th, we will be back outside, the brunch lovers. And also that day, I have a balloon release for my guy, Brandon Pope. That will be at Rest Haven Cemetery. Rest Haven Cemetery. We will be doing a balloon release for Brandon Pope. So later on that day is going to be very emotional. You know, again, there's some people who have experienced his loss differently. And this is why, again, like, we're not here to shame those people. We're not here to call those people weak or make them feel any less than they do already. But we're here to uplift them and educate them on how we got through it, how we are keep going on, and how we're going to continue to build and strengthen each other, because at the end of the day, we are all we got. And again, that's another one of those themes that from Sinners, you can see that two boys or two men who all they had were each other, right? So they knew each other better than most, right? And another thing that I wanted to talk about was how the fame that they carried, you could see that, you know, they viewed themselves as important, right? They viewed themselves as men of worth. But then you had other people who tried to define that worth. They tried to put them in a box. And, you know, we all know that you are the ones to determine your worth, right? You cannot allow someone to determine your worth, and you have to be real with yourself on where you fall short, right? Because sometimes we don't resist temptation, or we don't, you know, put ourselves in the best positions. And that's where we got to sit back, reflect, hold ourselves accountable, and try. Notice I said try, because for some people, change is just very, very difficult, right? And I'm not here to say that, you know, it's not, you know, your journey is your journey. But when you are making those active steps towards change, then you realize, hey, this part of my life was just a season, it's just a moment. I can get past this, right? And for me, sitting there talking to my good friend Eva opened my eyes to a lot. She asked me a very thoughtful question about struggle. And it's amazing because my brother and I, we have these conversations too, but I wanted to know her reasoning for asking me, right? Because, you know, how I view struggle and my perspective on struggle is when you have done all you can, when you have prayed to God, when you have gone to work, you've gone to church, you've gone to your therapist, you've done all the necessary things that make you feel, or that made you feel at peace before, and you're still not at peace, you have to understand that it's not the external forces, right? Those are going to always be there, right? But 9 times out of 10 is those internal forces that you aren't addressing, or you're probably scared that if you do address them, that someone is going to try to hurt you again, or just misuse your trust, you know, whichever has happened to you before, you're afraid that it's going to happen again. And for those of you who have gone through traumatic stuff like that, I will say that my heart goes out to you. I know that, you could be in a season where you're surrounded by distractions. You're surrounded by, you know, crime. You're surrounded by influences that don't necessarily encourage you to do the right thing. But that is why most of us, when we do become of age and we have that opportunity, we move as far as away from from the hood or from our poverty neighborhoods that we don't even recognize it when we get back, or whenever we do decide to come back, it's like it's unrecognizable because we spent so much time and so many years trying to get out of that neighborhood. We spend so much time trying to get away from those gangs. So when you get away and you see that the world is bigger than your block, now you have to understand that you could try to shame your way into a situation, but 9 times out of 10, that's going to come with consequences, right? You already know that you could try to be the funniest guy on the block, but usually those guys come from a lot of pain and hurt too, right? They come from a lot of neglect, or they come from a lot of trauma that once they get older, they channel that trauma into laughter, right? That's the beauty behind it. For most black men, we go through all of these things and people may or may not know about it. But once we go through those things, it's like, okay, we process it, we move on from it. Some of us may have a longer time getting over it, but once we move on from that, now it's back to, okay, how can I rebuild this? Or how can I build the trust in myself to open up again, right? Or maybe you just want to stay single, right? Some of us don't want to go through committed relationships anymore because of something that made them feel so ashamed that now you just don't want to, you want to avoid that feeling altogether, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying that you can't sit there and try to avoid these feelings, but the more you ignore it, the more or the bigger the issue becomes, right? Because now these people, they get around you and they see that you've let this slide, you've let that slide. So now it's like, how many times can I get over with this before you say something? Before you actually set a boundary and stand on it? Because that's all it takes, right? Sometimes it just takes us setting boundaries, sticking to them, avoiding the temptation. And while we're at it, I just wanted to say a few words on the Shannon Sharp incident. There's been a lot of talks these past days about Shannon Sharp and his situation, and I'm not gonna get into it. It's not my business to speak on anything that may or may not be true, but I will say this. Due to the factors involved, due to how many times we have associated him with younger women, I definitely would, and this is me talking to me right now, but I definitely wouldn't want to put myself or any of my children through, right? Let's say that first and foremost. I would not want to put them through that. I wouldn't want to put myself through that. But then now the next thing is keeping the relationship private, right? Whether it's consensual, non-consensual, it's best to keep your relationships, just as private as possible, because when you sit back and you realize, like, these people that you are, maybe your colleagues or whomever, your bosses, they're going to see these things. And if you've already been painted as a particular person, it's going to be harder for you to get that off of you if you just continue to follow down that path, right? If you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, people are going to feel like you haven't learned yet, right? They're going to feel like you want to suffer or you want to put yourself in a compromising position. But again, like I said, I'm not going to get into his personal life like that. I just wanted to say that that incident is full proof as to why when some black men express themselves, there's a certain amount of backlash from the opposite sex sometimes. Sometimes it's the same sex that you can't share these things, or you can't be too vulnerable. You can't be too comfortable, basically. Because the moment you get comfortable, that's when someone comes along and sweeps your girl off their feet and all of that stuff. But again, it's not about that, right? This is about learning yourself. Deep down, this is about learning yourself, what it is that you like, what brings you happiness. Because what another man finds to be true about you, it might not be true to that man, or it might not be their preference. But if this is what the life that you prefer, and if it fits your lifestyle, then who am I to tell a person not to date that person or that race or whomever? Like, you're not my son. I can't teach you these things. You have to learn it for yourself. But I'm getting a little off topic here. When we are at that point in our lives where it's a do or die situation, right? And I'm not saying that that's what he's in right now, but when you're in a do or die situation and you see that you can either hold on to what this relationship that you have with this person and eventually sink, or you can let go of all the things that's been weighing you down. Because as you know, when you are in that body of water and you have all of these things, it's going to weigh you down, right? It's going to be harder for you to navigate through those waters so that you can get to the shore if you have all this stuff that's weighing you down. So this is why I say again, everything is about perspective, right? Because you have a lot of people who view his situation and they don't find it that he deserves empathy, right? And I disagree with that part, but the points that were being made, I can't necessarily say that I disagree, because I personally would not be in this situation, right? I personally would not accept someone coming to my doorstep or sending me explicit text messages. We're going to cut that short real quick, right? And then also, speaking of real quick, him putting out the post about eventually, or not eventually, he has stepped down from his duties at ESPN. That only goes to show me that there's a lot more than people are making us aware to, right? And that's just like anything in Hollywood, anything in this music industry, anything in any industry that has America's handprint on it. You are in the society that they want to monetize off of these things. They want you to be so distraught that you let your guard down. And those are the moments when, again, a girl who isn't one with her boyfriend or best friend, husband, whatever you want to call it, if she's not on one accord with that person, it's going to be very easy for her to step out on you or someone else. And that's another thing that in that movie centers, they highlight women who are married or, just in other relationships, and how their their sin basically is no greater than the drunkard or the person who steals, or everybody's sin is their sins, right? And we as people were told to judge lest you want to be judged. So that just means, again, if you're a person that can't really take judgments well, you don't take criticism well, you don't like being shamed, all of these things that were meant to correct you, right? These are methods of correction that you've all rejected. And once you get to that one person who, they're trying to see what you're talking about and you're the person that's wasting their time, you can't be upset that these people don't want to be around you or they don't want to kick it with you anymore, because time is valuable, right? That's, to me, time is more valuable than money, right? So if you have all the time in the world, but you basically are slowing this person down, they're going to leave eventually, right? And that was just a little educational nugget for relationships. But going back to my friendship with Eva, there's a lot of things that I learned about myself through this experience throughout our lifetime. Um, Again, she is the first official, and I say official with a capital O, member of the Brunch Lovers Club. If I had the titles right, I think she would be my CEO for the company, because of the power that she holds with, being able to organize things, being able to grab ideas from other places and turn it into our own. We've had so many instances where the people that show up to my brunches, they don't know that she was a pivotal part in this. And that's partially on me. I have to do a better job of giving the credit where it's due. And this is why, again, me bringing her up, it was just God's timing, right? Like everything that transpired from the moment she asked me for the Sinners ticket, or have I gone to see it, it was instant connection, and I'm very grateful for that. So we're going to wrap this episode up with a little nugget on the Bible story of Samson and Delilah. And now, if you haven't read this, this is coming from the book of Judges. I think it's the first book, chapters 13 through 16. And to sum it all up, Samson was regarded as the strongest man, right? The strongest man. And now, ironically, I want you to picture yourself or Shannon Sharp as Samson. You're going throughout life, you're slaying this beast, you are putting your muscles on display for people who may be less fortunate or they just don't care. But you've put all that on display, and then you come across a lady who, when you first see her, you're ignoring them or ignoring her. You're not really trying to open up like she prompted or was prompted to. And as men, we have to act with discernment, right? We have to know when someone is coming with genuine intentions, or when they just want to use us, or they try to set us up. Whatever the case is, we have to be able to use our discernment in order to judge. And these are the only times where, again, it's not necessarily a sin to judge, right? We're not told to refrain from judging, but it says to judge lest you want to be judged, right? So if you're a person, you're living right, if you're a person who, you may have saved up for a year or two, you are consistently going to work, you're consistently paying your bills, you're doing all the things that adults do, but you want a little companionship, right? There's nothing wrong with that with men, right? But going back to my point though, I think that when we put so much emphasis on our physical physique, and we forget to train our minds, we forget to train our brains, these types of exercises matter too, right? We have to practice discernment. We have to practice releasing those urges and resisting temptation, right? Because most of this could have been avoided if he would have, or he or anyone in his position, if they were to resist, there would have been no sad story or nothing to learn from, right? But it's all on God's timing. All of this was meant to be told. It was meant to be relived thousands of years later, because all of this is connected, right? We are all connected. And quite frankly, this is why, again, we are not here to shame. We're not here to put down any black women. We're not here to put down any black men, right? We're here to tell the truth, nothing but the truth. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this series. I hope you understand that we will be talking about this for the next few weeks, at least the next 3 weeks, because there's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot to be educated on, and what better way to be educated than before the fame, right? So I will see you guys next week on the next episode of Before the Fame. Thank you for listening. This is your host, Jordan. You can follow me on Instagram at Brunch Lovers Are Us, or you can also follow me on TikTok at JoJo's Toolbox. Also, my YouTube page is JoJo's Toolbox as well. Have a good night, good people.